Okay, this here is the Bersa Thunder. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to clear this weapon. What you want to do is always make sure that when you have a grip that you have your finger on the slide here up high so you don't pull the trigger. And what you're going to do is the very first thing is take the source of the ammunition out of the weapon. Make sure there's no ammo. Now what you're going to do is you're going to push the slide to the rear, and here's your slide stop right here, which is actually used as a release when you want to load. So we're going to check the chamber. Nothing in the chamber, nothing in the mag well. So this weapon's ready to be looked at here since we've cleared it up. So what I want to show you with this is a pretty interesting pistol because of the fact that it's a double single. And what that means is the first time you fire this, it's going to be a long double action pull like that. And then the second shot, what will happen is the slide will come back. And the second shot, you want to wait for that, you want to feel for that reset. There's the reset. Now every shot after that first one is going to be single action because the slide is always coming back. So what double action is it's cocking the gun with your finger. So your finger has to do part of the work, cocking the mechanism, and then once it releases, that's the second part of the action. There's the second part of the action. So this is only double action for the first pull. Now, if this was always double action, you would always have to go like that. If it was a double action only pistol, but this pistol is double action, single action. So that very first pull, you're going to go like this because the slide isn't all the way back. It fires, slide comes back, chambers another round. So every shot after that first pull is going to be short, reset like that. And the way this Bersa Thunder works is you can carry it on safe, like here, and then thumb it off. But a lot of times the safety isn't used because of the simple fact that the safety is the trigger because it's a long, harder pull. So being that it's double action, you have to pull quite a ways, quite a bit of pressure before that first shot goes. And that's one of the reasons why police, when they had the Berettas in the police department, that first pull was so long that they barely had any accidental discharges because the trigger had to be pulled so far back and you had to pull so much that they didn't have any accidental discharges like they did with the Glocks. So this is a very safe pistol to carry because even if you don't have it on safety, you have to pull it all the way. You have to make that conscious decision, even if it's in your pocket or something, and something gets in the way of the trigger guard, the chances are it's not going to go off. Now you do want to have something covering the trigger guard anyway, even though the chances of it going off aren't that likely. So once again, you don't have to necessarily use the safety. Sometimes safeties, I hate to say it, but sometimes safeties are unsafe because they give you too much to think about with the pistol, especially a new person. This Bersa Thunder isn't for a new person because there's too many things to think about. For example, let's say that I want to fire 2 rounds. So I'm going to fire 2 rounds. So the first round, long double action pull, slide comes back. Okay, now we're in single action. But let's say that, let's say I don't want to fire this round, okay? Let's say I just wanted to fire 1 round and now I've got this cocked back. What do I do? Well, you can thumb it and pull the trigger and allow that hammer to come back, but that's the wrong way to do it. You can do it that way, but it's the wrong way to do it. It's more unsafe. If you notice this lever right here, this is a decocker also. So not only is it a true safety, but it's a decocker. which means when you pull down on this, it'll safely land the hammer so it doesn't strike the firing pin. So what's going on inside here is when you start to flip this down right here, what it does is it blocks the hammer right here so it can't strike the firing pin. So you're firing, let's say you fire a couple shots, 2, and let's say the third one you're going to stop and give it to somebody else to shoot. Then what you'll do is you'll decock it and give it to somebody else so that they can use it. So what's nice about the decocker is if you don't want to shoot, you can always decock the weapon. Now another thing is sometimes people will start off, rather than the long double action trigger pull, some people might start off like this if they're target shooting. But you don't want to do that in a defense situation, because you always want to make sure you have that double action pull first, because this is a lot lighter trigger. This is meant for long range shots and accuracy. So if you're just at the range and you want to take an accurate shot, you can pull it back like this, pull the trigger, you get that nice accurate shot. But in a defense situation, it's recommended that you pull through like this, so that first round goes out, and see how it is here, how hard it is to pull. So that first one goes out. So you have to make a conscious decision to shoot rather than having a hair trigger like this. And you should never be on the trigger anyway, unless you're ready to shoot. But I'm just saying it's a lot lighter. And if somebody has this cocked back and they have their finger in the trigger guard, and it shouldn't be in there, even if there's a threat, it shouldn't be in there. It should be right here until you're ready to shoot. This goes off real easy this way. So it's always recommended, I'm going to decock it here. It's always recommended that that first shot is long double action. And then another thing too is that when you decock it or put it on safety, what happens is you got a dead trigger. It's not going to, trigger isn't going to pull. So another thing that this one has is this one has a magazine disconnect also. So let's say you're firing. Now there's probably going to be one in the chamber. Let's say that there's one in the chamber and you have your magazine full. You see that? Magazine disconnect. Some guns will fire with the round in the chamber, even with the magazine disconnected. So what you want to do with this pistol, these types that have the magazine disconnect, is you have to remember there could be a round in the chamber there. And what some people do, depending on who the person is for defense, there's some people that might have this stored away with a round in the chamber. And then this is the key, essentially the key with more rounds to get it to shoot. So in other words, if you have this on you and you have this on your dresser somewhere, in your dresser, notice that you can't fire it. There's nothing you can do to fire it. You know, even like this. See, even like this, it's not going to work. So you can decock it, but you can't fire it without the magazine in. It's not going to fire that round that's in the chamber. So what some people do is they'll have a round in the chamber here, and once again they'll have the magazine, and then this is your key to fire the pistol, to get it started, if you want to call it that. So you're in a defense situation. During that time, nobody can mess with this or get it to go off. You should always have your guns out of children's reach anyway, and always have them locked up if you're not going to be around them. But the thing is that a kid can't get a hold of it. Either way, you can't do anything with it. So it's a very safe gun when the magazine is out. So if you have a round in the chamber, let's say that you have a defense situation and you have the magazine with you somewhere close, but it's on you. You just put it in like this. And then what you do is you already have a round in the chamber. So you're going to fire, and it's going to be double action the first time. Slide's going to come back. And then the next round is single action. There's your second shot right there. Now, a lot of people, what they'll do is single action's real easy to be accurate. So what a lot of people will do to be accurate with the first and the second shot, because they're different trigger pulls, what they'll do is they'll shoot double action like this. And when the slide comes back like this, and it's like this, what they'll do is they'll hit the decocker so that every shot is double action. So now you can see every shot is double action. So you fire, slide comes back, hit the decocker. So the sequence will be double action, double action, double action, double action. And the reason why you do that is because there's a difference between the first and the second shot. So a person might have shots like double action might be here, and then single action shots will all be here, because double action, it's harder to stay on target. So what you want to do is you want to practice getting that good double action shot so that the single action shots over here meet with the double action. And then you want to do pairs, which are one double action followed up by a single action. That's a pair right there. And then a pair of double action only. Pull the trigger, slide comes back, decock it, fire again, two double action. So that's what I'm saying. The Bersa Thunder, even though it's a very safe weapon, it's got so many safeties that it's not recommended for a new shooter because there's too many things to remember. So I'll go through it once again with you. Number one, don't worry about the safety, because your long trigger pull is the safety. So don't be concerned about that at all. That's safety right there. Sometimes safeties mess you up on what you're trying to do with the pistol. So all you have to remember is this. If you're going to take a long, accurate shot, you might want to go like this and get that long, accurate shot single. You want to work on most your double action shots, which are these, because if you can control the pistol with double action, then the single action, the shots will be close to the double action shot. So if you got the double action shot here and the single action over here, what you want to do is try to get them closer and closer together. So you do pairs, you do double action, single action. So that's the thing you guys have to understand about this pistol. Now, let's say that you're shooting, and once again, you're shooting, and you want to give the pistol to somebody so that they can have a few shots. Then you decock it for the next person. So person number one wants two shots. So we'll go 1, 2, decock. Okay, so you're decocked. And then the second person, 1, 2, decock. And then the third person and stuff like that. Now decocking, you don't necessarily have to have it on safety. You can flip it back up. Some Berettas, some police departments that had Berettas and double single action pistols like these, what some of them have is whenever you go down to safety, it'll pop back up for you, which is nice. It's called a pop-up decocker. So it pops up automatically for you, which is nice. So you have to remember to, if you decock it and you go down too far, you have to remember to take it off safety. But like I said, don't worry about the safety. Your safety is the trigger pull. Your safety is the trigger pull. And then after you fired one shot, your safety, if you want to use safety, is actually a decocker. So you decock it. Now the pistol's ready for somebody else. And if you're going to store it or you're not going to shoot it for a while, then you can throw it back on safe. But other than that, when people carry it, they're going to be carrying it like this. So they just take it out and fire a shot double action. Or some people might have it like this and flip it out when they draw from the holster. But it depends. Some police departments with the Beretta, which is similar to this, the double single action type pistol, some of them, what they'll do is they'll come out of their holster like this. Some of the pistols would have pop-up decockers where the decocker would just automatically come up. So it's always in the fire position. So a lot of people see that fire position and they think, oh, it's not safe. But that isn't what it means. It's safe. It's just a second safety. And then your third safety is the lockout right here, where you have a key and you lock the pistol out with a key, which is unnecessary. So anyway, that's the thing you have to understand about this pistol. So, and the other thing too is when you're loading this pistol, there's a few ways you can chamber around. Some people like to hit the slide stop so it chambers around. So just imagine me putting in a magazine. I'll put one in. So you got a full magazine, but there's none in the chamber. Go like this, hit your slide stop, you're chambered. And you can hit this if you're not ready to shoot. So now you're decocked, okay? Another way to do it is you put your magazine in and you want to chamber around. There's a thing called slingshot where you go like this. Okay, and that chambers around. There's not a round in there, so it won't go now. Slingshot is like this, so it chambers around. Okay, and then the other type is overhand. So overhand, you would go like this, let her go. Okay, that would chamber around right there. And then the other type of chambering around would be front. So some people, might want to go in the front, but you don't want your hand in the way of the muzzle. So you would go and then let her ride. She's chambered. And then hit your decocker because you're not ready to shoot yet. Just like that. So Bersa Thunder, 380 ACP, and this one's 7+1, so you got 8 rounds, 1 in the chamber, 7-round mags, and then you just get a few 7-round mags and you're fine. But it's very accurate, and here's the sights right here. Very, very accurate. And recoil, because it is a blowback, which means the barrel stays in the same position all the time. It doesn't tilt or move around like in some semi-autos. This is a fixed barrel, and that's why it's so accurate. The barrel always stays the same, so that's why it's very accurate. And it's a blowback, so it will have some recoil, but it depends on the loads that you're shooting. So every load is different. Some have more recoil than others, but this is definitely much better to handle than any 9mm of its same size. And the 380 ACP, if you took all the ammo of the most powerful 380 rounds you can find, the most expanding, the most penetrating, and you compare them to a 9mm, it stacks up about 66% of a 9mm. So you're getting 66% of the performance of a 9mm out of this 380. Now standard 9mm defense loads, the Bersa Thunder can get close up to the 325 or 300, like it would be in a 3.5 inch barrel like this. So like Buffalo Bore and Underwood and stuff can get you up to 9mm performance, but then obviously you got 9mm that can have performance rounds too. So in general, the Bersa Thunder and the 380 with the same barrel lengths, the 380 is going to be about 66% of the performance of the 9mm if you compared all the most powerful loads, which is good for a Bersa Thunder. And like I said, a lot of times people aren't using the full power 9mm loads, so getting Buffalo Bore or Underwood 90 grain jacketed hollow point for this one, it's going to be the same as your basic target loads like 9mm and basic defense loads. So that's the good thing about it. So there's nothing wrong with a single stack. It's the person that's shooting is what matters. You got 7+1 here. You got 8 rounds, and shot placement is key. You want to practice making good shots. Practice your cover. Do drills and stuff like that. You want to make every shot count because Bill Allard, back in the 70s stakeout squad, he had a 1911-45, and he only had 8 rounds himself, and he was in a lot of shootouts, and the most important thing he said was shot placement. So not praying and spraying and just pulling the trigger like crazy. You want to make sure that you line up that front sight and you got your target in sight. You don't have to dress up the front sight. Most defense ranges, you don't have to dress up the front sight. What I mean by that is if you're in a defense situation and you just push out like this, and let's say that front sight's a little bit to this side, a little bit to this side, a little bit up, a little bit down, it's not going to matter because your target is so close. It's not going to matter. This is a dressed up sight right here where the front and the rear sight are level with each other. This is for precision and performance. It's not necessary in a very, very fast-moving self-defense situation. So the target is in front of you at 5 to 7 yards, which is the average defense situation for a private citizen. I'm not talking law enforcement. I'm talking people that aren't in law enforcement that have defense situations. It's up close and personal. It only lasts for a few seconds. You don't have to be perfect with them sights. You have that front sight right there, and you're watching the front sight, not the target. So a lot of people will, like if my hand's the target here, a lot of people will focus on the target. What you want to do is forget about the target, focus on the front sight, put all your focus on the front sight, and you will find the target. So that's what you have to remember. This is the most important thing, not the target here, the front sight. Because once you find the front sight and you move the front sight, you'll see maybe a blurry target, but you'll be able to get that front sight on that target. So that's why you don't want to focus too much on the target and mostly focus on the front sight. Because once you got a hold of the front sight, all you have to do is move it where you want it. And you don't have to be perfect. Like you could be like this or like this. And a lot of times what you can do is on the range, you can practice at close range targets, like a 4-inch target at 5 yards or something like that, 4 or 5 yards, 3 yards even. You want to practice shooting like this, intentionally shooting where the front sight isn't perfect. Shoot it like this, shoot it like this, shoot it like this, and just kind of see where the shots are going. So you don't have to necessarily be perfect, because one of the things about the target you have to understand is that the human heart is about this big. So if you're putting shots at 3 yards to 10 yards in this zone right here, this is smaller than an A zone on a competition target, okay? This is what's important, is the palm of, or the fist of your hand. If you can stack them inside the fist on your paper, that's what the most important thing is for defense. Because when you hit the heart, it drops the blood pressure. So other parts of the body, you're not going to drop the blood pressure as fast. And of course, we've got the in between the eyes and the ears in the brain. But the thing about that is sometimes it's probably smaller than this, your fist, maybe half that size. But don't get discouraged by it. You want to practice heart shots and head shots. So that's the important thing about defense with any pistol, 380, 45, or anything like that. It's shot placement, and people say things, well, what if a guy's got his arm in front of his chest or whatever, and the bullet's got to go through his arm and stuff like that. You really shouldn't worry about that. Or somebody might say, what about broadside? Well, a lot of people that are attacking you, they're not attacking you broadside. They're attacking you at a fighting stance, which is kind of like a 45-degree angle. So their chest, let's say that this is their chest right here. Their chest is at a 45-degree angle, because if they're standing like this, it's hard to attack somebody when you're standing broadside. So they're always going to be at a 45 this way or a 45 this way with a knife or a gun. So that whole 12-inch penetration thing, that's where that comes from, is that broadside shot. But attackers aren't broadside usually in most defense situations. They're about a 45-degree fighting stance with a knife or a gun, either this way or this way. And then, yes, here's your chest. And I understand that, yes, you could have, like, let's say that my finger is my arm in front of my sternum or my chest, okay? My arm right here is in front of my chest. Let's say that this is my chest, and the bullet would have to go through the arm and then go through the chest. But if you missed that first shot, and let's say you didn't penetrate, okay, and it wasn't a good shot, you still got more rounds in the magazine. So once again, it's all shot placement, okay? Even if some of the 380 rounds in the FBI test were only penetrating 10 inches or something like that, you can still work with it. You could still be effective. So once again, you have to go by the most likely scenario. And the most likely scenario is an attacker is never going to be broadside, because it's hard to do a successful attack when you're broadside. You only got one hand and you need two hands. And a lot of times a frontal attack is probably more common, or a 45-degree attack in a good fighting stance, because you can't just stand there sideways. There's nothing you can do to the person. So you have to be at a 45 like this, or frontal attack like this. So this whole sideways stuff, very rarely is somebody going to attack you walking sideways. So, and the reason why the FBI went with that 12 to 15 inches or 16 inches of penetration is for that very reason, because they were thinking that if your chest is here and you have to do a broadside shot, you would have to go through all that bone and stuff, like an arm over here, and go through all that bone and get to the heart. And there's some truth in that at a broadside shot. But the thing is that even if you're not successful broadside, all you have to do is just wait until they turn. I mean, once again, it's all shot placement, people. It's all shot placement. It's about dropping that blood pressure. If you hit somebody with a 45 and it doesn't hit the heart, and they're a determined individual, not necessarily on drugs now. Some of the guys that soaked up the most rounds in combat or videos on YouTube have been guys actually that have not been on drugs at all. So this whole thing about, a guy jacked up on drugs, it's not always true. A lot of times these guys are sober, but they can soak them up because they have a will to fight and a will to live. So if you don't drop that heart blood pressure, that heart that's beating, and you don't hit an artery, see the oxygen, it's still going to their brain. And we know even in deer hunting that if you hit the heart, it doesn't necessarily mean instant stopping. It starts the stopping, but it's not always instant. So if you hit the heart and you want to have a follow-up shot or something like that, that's the best way to go, to guarantee that there's going to be more blood pressure loss. And then also, of course, the headshot, which would be half the size of this, maybe a 2x2 or something like that. But anyway, that's what people have to understand. They have to understand what is most likely as far as defense. And you can get by on a 380. So you can get by on a 22. It's all about shot placement. It's about your tactics and your training. It's about thinking about what you're doing. It's about your cover. It's a lot of things. Situational awareness. Being able to get the first shot off before the bad guy does, before he attacks you, that kind of thing. So it's a lot of things. It's not just about caliber and capacity. There's a lot more things that have to fall in place to be able to be successful in a defense situation. If you want to look at it like baking a cake, baking a cake. You don't have a cake if you don't have the flour, okay? Let's say you leave the flour in, but you take out the sugar. You still don't have a cake. It's not a true cake because you're leaving out ingredients, okay? So if you have a high-capacity magazine and a 9mm, and you leave out the factor of situational awareness and the guy gets a drop on you, it doesn't matter if you have a 17-round magazine or a more powerful handgun. It doesn't matter if you're poor shot placements. If you have poor shot placements, it doesn't matter, because it's not always about capacity and about the power of the gun, about the rounds, the power of the rounds. Capacity and power of the rounds doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have the advantage, because there's so many other things that have to work out. So there's been guys that have been sober. You can see them online, a couple police officers and the situations that they've been through where they didn't make good shot placements. And you've seen the story about the guy getting hit 10 or 20 times with the 45 ACP, and you wonder why he's still alive and why he was able to fight for such a long time. It's because if you look at the autopsy or the printout that they showed you, the police officer, about, the hits that he made and stuff, you'll notice that the red dots are not, most of them are not in a vital area. So that's the problem. So you guys have to understand, just because somebody gets shot several times, it doesn't mean that the cartridge wasn't powerful enough to get the job done. It was because of poor shot placement. Most of it is poor shot placement or using too many rounds and not hitting anything. So you want to do the best you can with as little rounds as possible. So anyway, thanks for watching, you guys.